Please welcome to the stage Miss Kate Goodall.
Come on, it's me, people. It's me. Woo! All right, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you guys coming here. This is a momentous day. S&R purchased this building, the Fillmore School, 2 years ago, and it didn't look like this. So it's 2 years of work for us, and we're really thrilled to have everyone here to celebrate the completion of that work and welcome our amazing artist fellows, which I am honored to introduce to you today. First, I just want to tell you a little story. To those of you who know the Halcyon myth, I promise it still won't be boring. And for those of you who don't, it's really important to understanding what it is that we do as an organization. So essentially, there were two lovers. They loved each other so much that they made the gods jealous. And their curse was to be made into birds. And these birds had lived a life in winter storms that were so torrential you just can't even imagine. But they were granted their atonement. They were granted 2 weeks of incredible weather, of safe haven, to be able to lay their eggs and get their fledglings up and ready for the world. This is how halcyon has become known as a word most associated with optimism and safety and tranquility, and all of those amazing associations that we as an organization intend to curate in any space that we operate for the benefit of our fellows. Because when you, as an incredible change maker, because that is who we support, not just social entrepreneurs, not just artists, but change makers, when you as a change maker say, I'm going to go solve our problems with the foster care system, I'm going to prevent xenophobia, in many areas of the world, you will not receive the most friendly response. But when you're here at Halcyon, we will support you, we will cherish you, we will be your source of hope, hopefully. We'll be many more things. Yes, we provide spaces, we provide residents, we have a very generous program, but our ultimate goal is that when all of our fellows are with us, that they really have that sort of sense of cherishing and hope, and hopefully they leave us with a renewed sense of self-efficacy that they can go out and really make a difference. Because every one of them is extremely talented and very capable of doing that. I do have a couple of things I need to say as well. When we were designing this program, the Halcyon Arts Lab, which is kind of an echo of our Halcyon Incubator program, for those of you who know that, I was lucky enough to have a couple of great partners. One, Jeremy Ney, who is no longer here, but two, Nicole Dowd, who is the lead for the Halcyon Arts Lab. She is amazing. Danielle Reed and Sun King Davis, without whom this building would not be finished, and Ilex Construction. Megan Merchant, who is sort of Nicole's partner in crime, and Megan runs a similar fellow program for high schoolers from Ward 7 and 8 that are going to be working with our fellows to also produce public art projects. What else do I need to say? I need to say thank you to our amazing sponsors and supporters. We have some of our wonderful board members here today. I want to say thank you to the NEA. I want to say thank you to the Bernstein Family Foundation. I want to say thank you to Whole Foods for all of the food and drink. Woo, Whole Foods. Let's see, I want to say a special thank you to our program committee, our selection committee, many of whom are also here, who did a lot of work and a lot of thinking about who our first cohort of artists in the Halcyon Arts Lab should be. And we really appreciate their time and efforts on that front. I think you guys are going to be really excited by not only the range of media that our arts fellows are using, but also the diversity of topics, from youth incarceration to, as I mentioned, preventing discrimination and xenophobia. They really run the gamut, and I don't really want to be in the way of you hearing from them for much longer. So I'm going to exit stage left and introduce you to our very first arts fellow, Georgia.
My name is Georgia Saxelby, and my art is about creating shared symbolic experiences for people. Special moments of collectivity in a culture where it's hard to feel a sense of togetherness and a sense of shared meaning. To do this, I immerse myself in the study of ritual practices and mythologies across cultures and geographies, from Japan to Mexico to Ireland to my home country of Australia. My performative installations have invited my audiences to ceremoniously dine together. They have been cathartically smashed by my audience and ritualistically burnt by my audience. But I create these symbolic actions because I work with the understanding that symbols and symbolic actions shape our ethos and define our deepest values. So I believe that collective symbolic actions can function as very powerful and unique vehicles for social and cultural change. These are some of the questions that I'll be asking while I'm here working in Washington, D.C. What do our rituals and mythologies reveal about us? How is cultural identity formed, and how can it be reformed? What role can I play as an artist in contributing to a new cultural heritage for tomorrow? As a young woman coming to terms with herself and her role in this world, while at Halcyon, I will be unraveling our collective relationship to women, which I feel right now and right here is incredibly important. I'll be creating large-scale installations and performances that stem from my daydreams, imagining a world where girls and young women, such as myself, can stretch as far as they want. I am very excited to be here creating my work in your city. And while I'm here, I want to meet all of you, so come and get to know me, because I need people who want to help me share my stories and create the change that my art wants to create, changing our perception of feminine identity today. So help me share these stories and speak louder. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephen Hayes. As I stand here, I ask myself, how do I start? Do I say, as a child, my mom saying that I was talented in making things and decided to buy me a workbench with all the tools I needed to explore and create anything I needed, but then it also made me an introvert? Or do I say, as a child, I was always Or do I say, as a child, I was always, sorry. Or do I say, as a child, I was always the minority in school growing up, that one day I was pulled aside by an African-American guidance counselor and was told that I needed to apologize to a student for something I did not do, and that my family or I could face a lot of trouble? Knowing full well I didn't do what this person said I did, I apologized to them, and she laughed in my face and walked off. Or do I say, as a child, seeing the depiction of a male that looked like me on television made me want to dress and act like them? Or do I say, through grad school, still a minority, being put in a box, being asked to solely do work on race, even though my work deals with race, but it deals with so much more than race? No, I got it. Hi, my name is Stephen Hayes. I'm a mixed media sculpture artist. I do anything from blacksmithing, welding, Photoshop, Illustrator, printmaking, woodcuts, woodwork, and furniture, and so on. I want to make my artwork famous and my name legendary. My work explores race, identity, and stereotyping in the areas of capitalism, consumerism, and brainwashing. I want to use my work or my practices in making art to inspire that kid or person to do or be something more than what's commonly stereotyped in today's media or in their environment. I use symbolism in my artwork that convey these messages. Here at Halcyon, I'll be working on a project called Block Lenses. This project, or this installation, explores the moment in which someone finds out that they are a minority. I will be also using video in this installation. And here at Halcyon, my goal is to expand my network, make my artwork famous, and my name legendary. Again, my name is Stephen Hayes.
Hi, I'm Kristen Adair. I'm a documentary photographer, filmmaker, and multimedia storyteller. I think we artists often take the road less traveled by, but my path to get here to the Arts Lab perhaps was a bit more winding than most. I was the teenager who took photographs and wrote poems really just to try to understand my own experiences of pain and loss and just not fitting in. Then I took a few detours. I went to college and law school. Along the way, to deal with my own stress, I became a yoga teacher. And then about 6 years ago, for the first time, I walked into a juvenile detention center, which would be better referred to as a kid's jail, to teach a mindfulness and arts curriculum that I had helped to develop. That first day, when I heard the heavy gate close behind me, this jarring sound of confinement that brought me into a different reality that I realized wasn't all that far from my own. Inside, I met a group of young people who were creative and passionate and also struggling to connect and heal their own pain and trauma. And all those bends in the road started to make sense. Around the same time, I was making a professional transition from nonprofit lawyer to, I hoped, documentary storyteller. And at some point, there was no question in my mind about the work I was supposed to be doing. For the last several years, I've been immersing myself in the stories of young adults whose lives have been shaped and scarred by their involvement in the criminal injustice system. I have produced a film, a short documentary called Becoming Free, which is almost finished and will be completed while I'm here at Halcyon. So lots to look forward to there. But in addition, I'm going to be working on a new series of short stories, multimedia stories, that center the voices of young people to shift the narrative about mass incarceration. My approach to this work is very collaborative. It's about listening and asking questions, about having a dialogue, about sharing my own story and vulnerability. And my intention is for this work to bring audiences out of this space of desensitization that a lot of us experience when we throw around words like mass incarceration, and instead to create spaces for shared experience and connection. What does it actually feel like for a 17-year-old to spend 6 months in a solitary confinement cell in an adult federal prison? What does it look like for a young woman in her mid-30s to come home to DC after she spent half her life essentially growing up behind bars? How can we as a community start to vision spaces for healing and rehabilitation, to address some of the individual and communal trauma that our, quote, justice system is perpetuating, particularly in communities of color? Over the next 9 months here at Halcyon, my goal is to really take some of these stories outside of the box that is your computer screen or your TV or a photograph on the wall and transform them into immersive and tangible tools for dialogue and advocacy. I'd invite you all to join me in this endeavor to revision a little bit and expand the approach to creative storytelling in a way that can have the maximum impact, and really also thinking about where and how to disseminate this work to reach people and create those spaces for connection. Thank you all for coming. I hope that we can all meet, whether today or over the coming months, and I hope to talk with you each about this work. Thank you.
I think of myself as an artist of change. I am Josie Corona, and I am also Dr. H. Corona. My alter egos are part of my larger inquiry into who we are and how we construct ourselves and our identities. And how so often those of us who exist in the margins of society have to change who we are simply to survive. The running inquiries that run throughout my work are, what does it mean to be a queer Latinx immigrant in a place where there are few queer Latinx immigrants? And what are the social, psychological, and physical ramifications of never seeing yourself reflected anywhere? These inquiries are made apparent in my ongoing series, The Nobodies, where I explore what it means to be a disenfranchised member of society in North America by embodying the abstract concept of nobody. Nobodies are scapegoated not for who they are, but rather for who they are not. And they are routinely dehumanized in order to validate the violent attacks upon them. I oftentimes intertwine the archetype of the scapegoat as a way for us to visualize the strategic selection and dehumanization of somebody made into nobody for the supposed well-being of the group. I think of my practice as in a constant state of becoming a painting or becoming a sculpture or becoming neither. You see, I don't fit neatly into any one particular box. I am neither a painter nor am I a sculptor. I am both and more. So it is no surprise that during my stay here at Halcyon Arts Lab, I will be working on my most ambitious project yet, Alienation, a large-scale immersive installation and performance that ponders who is considered an alien in the United States and who is considered a human. I will weave the narrative of the scapegoat into this story, one that was presumably cast off into the wilderness and left alone to die. But we didn't die. We survived. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. I am currently seeking partnerships with individuals or institutions who would like to bring alienation to reality. I am particularly interested in having access to large spaces with multiple rooms in various locations that can accommodate the triumphant return of somebody. Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with each of you during the studio session.
Hi, my name is Sheldon Scott, and I am a Washington, D.C. based artist. Just want to make sure you guys know that there are two artists who are based from Washington, D.C. who are a part of this cohort, and we're very excited to be participating in this process. My work plays in the intersection of race, economic, and sexuality. I make performance, installation, sculpture, ephemera, photography, objects, spoken word narrative, and creative nonfiction. During my 9 months here at Halcyon, I'm going to be working on this project called Project Unlearn is the code name now. And Project Unlearn examines pedagogy and bias in early childhood and early elementary education through performance and visual arts. I will be working with two very awesome partners. One is Teaching for Change, who is here tonight. Where are you? There she goes. Teaching for Change is an organization based in Washington, D.C. that serves teachers and helps them to combat bias in the classroom. And my lead teacher on this is Mr. Carlos Duque, who's in the back, and he is an early childhood elementary education teacher at the Capital City Charter School. And over these 9 months, what we're going to be doing is working on a curriculum that's going to focus on anti-bias in pre-K 3 to 3rd grade. And, you know, one of the main reasons why I'm very interested in working in this project is being a product of the South Carolina education system. I also often found myself put in this position where I was expected to underperform. The exact words from my 12th grade English teacher was that she didn't think I was college material. I have subsequently sent her an invitation to every graduation that I've had. And then maybe one day I'll send her the one for my doctorate, who knows. But for this project, I am really looking for some strong partners and cultural institutions that would be able to present my work, which will be made of large-scale installation, some sculptural work, some 2D and 3D work as well, too. And I'm also looking for partners who can help me to scale this curriculum that I'm developing, because even though like we live in the bubble here in Washington, D.C., and it's a great place to create this, it is very important that this type of educational tool makes its way to some underserved school districts all around the country. So I'm looking for people who can help me to scale this so that school districts like I came from in South Carolina will be empowered to help children learn that there are more than one narratives out there and that there's a space for them in all of these stories, and to kind of break the bias that's in early childhood education, because it is very important that the first information we learn is the most important information we learn, because we keep that with us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chloe Ben Sahel. I'm a textile artist, and I have a confession to make. I was relieved to leave. You see, before I was a Franco-Moroccan girl in an American classroom, I was a Jewish girl in a Catholic classroom, where I pretended to know the words to Catholic songs that I didn't know, and denied being a Jew because I didn't even know what it meant. So when they called me American in France and French in America, I didn't even mind, because I'd never known what it was like not to be foreign, not to be other. My work deals with notions of otherness, inspired by my own experience and memories of being a foreigner, myself having been an immigrant in the United States, actually here in DC, from the age of 7. I learned how to speak English 2 blocks from here. I'll be continuing this work here at Halcyon for over the next 9 months in a project called Mater, which is both the root of the word material and mother in Latin. It will speak to this notion of the motherland, which for many of us who are neither from here nor there often look for. I'll be working in the medium of textiles, incorporating other elements such as sound and large-scale installation, because not only does every culture has its own relationship to textiles, but they are so linked to our sense of identity. Since as clothes, they are the primary barrier between the self and the collective. I'm really excited to be back here. It's been 10 years since I lived in DC. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of you to hear about your own stories of being other or somehow different. If, like me, you've ever experienced what it's like to hide what makes you somehow different. I'm also looking to collaborate with some of you on space to show this work so that together we can create a place for the immigrant. Thank you.
Okay, so normally for my artist talks, I actually typically have the audience like sit down on the floor, but I'm not gonna do that, don't worry. I just like it when everyone's sitting down, but we won't do that. So my name is Stephanie Mercedes. I'm an Argentinian-American artist, and my project and my entire practice is in reaction to Copyright Bill number 2517D 2015, which, if passed, would change copyright in Argentina. Instead of being 25 years post-production, it would be 70 years post-mortem. This is important in Argentina because the vast majority of photographers who documented the dictatorship themselves disappeared by the states, which means they do not have the legal rights to death. So if copyright is changed from post-production to post-mortem, then the archive and the trove of images which are documenting this period of time will become privatized by the state. So the project that I am doing now is that I'm taking 2,540 images, one for each day during the dictatorship, and then I am personally altering them in 4 ways. I am layering the images, I am negating the images, I am contrasting the images, and I'm changing some of the light of the images. I will then personally re-copyright each of these images, and as soon as legislation is passed, I will donate it back into the public domain, so that there will always be a public, accessible archive of the Argentinian dictatorship, accessible to all.
Oh, hello. Ciao. Happy LGBTQIA+ History Month. My name is Antonius Bui. I am fearless. I am magico. I am divine. I am the creation of refugees who have sacrificed everything so I can be standing here right now with all of you. I proudly identify as a queer Vietnamese American. I'm a survivor, and I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I speak fearlessly before all of you because others have wasted too much of my time making me feel any less than I am today. Before I was Antonius, I was Anthony, a very awkward, shy, lost boy in the Bronx who was very complacent and silent. I was socialized to believe that the model minority myth was what I should aspire for my entire life. It wasn't until that I came to terms with my sexuality that I really started to become aware of this cage, this system that we're all trapped in. I watched a lot of gay porn and gay movies, but could not relate whatsoever to the pristine white men who always got laid because I don't think they were called chink, or read No Asians on Tinder and Grindr, or were told that my oriental skin was a turn on. In fact, I was completely disorientated growing up because the only representation of queer and trans people of color that I saw revolved around tragedy and death. How fucked up is that? It is 2017 and not much has changed. Since the beginning of the year, I have interviewed over 35 queer and trans people of color. We all agree that we all wished we had role models, stories, images of other QT folks so we could feel like we belonged. My project involves interviewing and photographing queer and trans people of color so we can write ourselves into history. It is time to be heard. And so, hence, this is where all of you come in. I can't do this all alone. We are fabulous. We are magical. We are divine. And so I ask each and every single one of you to continue being yourselves, continue being fearless, and fight for what you believe in, but also help me. Recommend me a studio artist, or swing by my studio for a studio visit. Suggest a book, or ask for my Amazon wish list, because Lord knows I don't have the money to pay for all these books. And so we are a community. I am extremely, extremely excited to be here. And I thank all of you. Please get in touch with me if you would like to offer up a space, if you identify as QT-POC yourself. And most importantly, continue being fucking amazing.
All right, one more round of applause for all of the amazing fellows. You will have time with all of them shortly, but we have a very special guest with us today. But I'm not the lucky one who gets to introduce him. That honor goes to one of my favorite people in the world. When you have a vision for something, in this case, Halcyon, and you tell somebody about it, Even if you're really passionate about it, until you have that person next to you who says, yeah, that's actually pretty good, and you know what, I'm going to help you, you're not a visionary, you're a crazy person. So Amy Aronson is very much that person for me. About, I don't know, 3 months into figuring out whether Halcyon could actually exist, sitting in the basement of an unrenovated Halcyon house before we had the Halcyon incubator, before we had anything, Amy sat there and said, you know what, I'm here. Let me know what you need me to do. And she's been there ever since. I think she embodies what Halcyon is all about in terms of figuring out what is possible, maintaining and holding a space for hope and optimism. And her family's foundation has been generous enough to support the Arts Lab for 3 years. So it is my honor to introduce one of my great friends and earliest supporters, Amy Aronson.
First of all, congratulations to all of our fellows. You are amazing. You're authentic, you're vulnerable, you're entrepreneurial, you're completely, you are bold, and I love it. So I'm here, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's such a privilege. I had the opportunity to meet with Kate and Dr. Kuno almost 5 years ago, I think. And Dr. Kuno is one of the most visionary women I've met in the city. She's incredibly forward-thinking. We met at the Corcoran, we met again at the Krieger, and she is thinking deeply about the future. And with her incredible generosity, she's inviting all of us to be a part of it. So I said yes to Kate because I like saying yes to opportunity where I can be creative and I too can be bold. And I feel so proud to be part of a family foundation which my grandfather started back in 1952. Our family has been here for 6 generations and took great pride in the history of this country and used our family philanthropy to really double down on 3 areas. One is American history, one is arts and culture, and Jewish causes. So it's wonderful to be able to leverage our philanthropic dollars and get behind a woman who's so visionary that's willing to take on the level of responsibility to restore this historic building, which I don't know how many people know, just a quick history, but this building was created back in 1894, I believe, and it was used as an elementary school. And then I think up until the late 1990s, it's pretty remarkable that the Corcoran used it as a satellite for their after-school art classes. And both my children went here learning about art, getting dirty, experimenting, playing, and dreaming. And so to see the stewardship that Dr. Kuno has afforded all of us to take hold in this brilliant vision and ensure that she's not alone in it. So our family has committed 3 years of investment and even more with the Halcyon Art Incubator. But really to invite all of you to join us to make sure that we are responsible for seeing this place succeed and using historic space to think about how does the future in the 21st century look and feel. So join us in all that it holds. And I'm so thrilled because I invite all of you that because just our family invested in, there's a beautiful mosaic. I don't know if it's right behind us. Kate, is this it? And so what I invite you to do, the only way that success can happen is if we all are in it together. Each individual artist is not in itself able to create the systemic change. It's the beauty of the interplay of all of you. And what this space holds is for us to all to come together and support them. This is like MTV Real World. You get to see what it's like to live and breathe and create and take risk and fall down and rise up together. But it's your collective vision, it's your collective creativity that's going to create change. The same thing with the funding of this facility. There's a beautiful mosaic that's actually Kate has displayed in the back. And we are looking for 20 more stakeholders to invest $10,000 to have your name or your company's name to be a part of it. And we invite you to join us to really be to take your individual handprint and join us to make sure that this can be successful. So if you think about it, if you have any questions, if you want to join me and our family, don't be shy. Come, especially right now as we're starting to unveil the magic of what this place can hold. So the real reason I'm here is because I have the privilege of introducing Ben Cameron, who's, if I could spend the next hour telling you about all of his accomplishments, but just to give you a little teaser, because I think he is somebody that if you haven't recognized him on YouTube, you will never forget him after he speaks. And I think we need these champions and visionaries to magnify, amplify what the power of art is. Ben is the newly appointed president of the Jerome Foundation. It's based in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a vital source of support for young artists in Minnesota and New York. I don't know how he has time, but he also has a second foundation, the Camarago Foundation, based in France, also supporting scholars and artists. As if that wasn't enough, and I'm not sure how he's held all these positions over his 40 years of wisdom. And I said, Ben, actually, can you hold one job? Because you are, not really, no. But he was formerly the head of the Doris Duke Foundation. They deployed over $50 million into individual artists. Before that, he was the director of the Theater Communications Group, the Dayton Hudson Foundation. He was the manager of the Community Relations for Target. He was also the former director of the National Endowment for the Arts. You're not tired yet, are you? We're going to keep going. He's had extensive travel all over the world. He also gave an incredible TEDx in Calgary, over 500,000 viewers. I highly encourage all of you to see it. I watched it a couple nights ago, and it was deeply inspiring. He also has honorary degrees from Goucher College, DePaul University, University of North Carolina. He's currently a teacher at the Yale School of Drama. I don't know where you have your time. But anyway, we are so blessed to have him and his vision and his words of truth. And how do we harness art in the 21st century to have cultural diplomacy and social impact? So let's give a big round of welcome for Ben.
They've got me mic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is 22-point font, double-spaced. It's old eyes, so don't panic. Thank you all so much for giving me your time today. And I want to say congratulations to the 8 of you. Before I say anything else, I am really intimidated to speak to you all, in part because you're all so eloquent, but also because I have not the least scintilla of visual arts talent. In 8 years of public art school in High Point, North Carolina, I was the only child who never had his picture put up on the wall. I'm just telling you. So this makes me really intimidated to speak to you all today. And it's a great honor to be with you at the outset of what I hope is a fantastic adventure for you all here in Washington, D.C. This is a once-in-a-life opportunity you have to meet with philanthropists and legislators and thinkers of an unbelievable degree, and I hope you seize this for everything you are worth. To the rest of you, I would recall the words of Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles. Now, I don't want to offend people in Washington when he said, you know, we think it's the federal government in Washington, D.C. that's the home of innovation. Garcetti's actually said, you know, actually big change is going to happen at the local level. And increasingly, it's going to be the Fed's job to take big, successful innovations and bring them to scale. For those of you that have the opportunity to meet with these 8 people in front of you, I hope you tell them everything you know, but I hope you also look at them as the innovators for the future, and that we look to them to teach us how we might go into a new chapter, and that we can help bring their work to scale. You know, I'm actually going to say something I wasn't going to say to start, because I was really struck by what you all said. And I think those of us who work and traffic in the arts sometimes can feel anxious about the privilege it may have that we're giving our lives to the art in such a difficult time. You know, I think that at least where we sit, this country right now is in a place unlike any that I've ever seen in my life. We are a deeply divided country right now. And I'm often struck by the words of Steve Coleman, who wrote a book called The 5% about intractable problems in the world, where he said, you know, 5% of the problems in the world get to be what he calls intractable problems. We get so mired in it, we just get stuck and we can't get our way out. You know, the Middle East is an intractable problem. Abortion rights in this country is an intractable problem. Unfortunately, gun control in this country is an intractable problem. And when he said basically what do all intractable problems have in common, he said all intractable problems have 3 things in common. Number 1, the people involved take everything as a win-lose, winner-take-all competition. He said, secondly, people reduce complex ideas to sound bites and oversimplified, quick bullet points and tweets, for lack of a better term. And third, and finally, most importantly, perhaps, the people involved surround themselves with self-reinforcing feedback loop that reinforce their initial point of view no matter what's been said in the meantime. You know, as I listen to you all, I think it's time that we claimed and stand up proudly and say the arts are an alternative to intractable problems. You know, instead of being based in competition, we are based in cooperation. It's how the work is made. It's what it means for artists to talk to audience, audience to audience, artist to artist. Instead of being about oversimplification, we stand for complex ideas, ambiguity, shades of gray, difficulty. And at our best, at our very best, rather than surrounding ourselves with self-reinforcing feedback loops, we convene people not like each other to look at their fellow human being with generosity and curiosity. God knows if we have ever needed that capacity in human history, we need it now. And to you 8 falls the charge to lead us into that future. You know, my job today, as I understand it, is to do two things. To talk to some of you who are the philanthropists and thinkers about a different way to think about this moment we are in the arts. And then I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking to you all. And I swear I'm going to be done in 15 minutes max, because I go really fast. You all are coming together today, I don't need to tell you, in a time of seismic, confusing, exhilarating, debilitating, depressing, thrilling change. Who we are as a country is changing, as you all know, as we move rapidly to a non-majority country, as indeed California and Texas already are. And while on the one hand, this brings fantastic new opportunities in collaborations, in aesthetics, in community, and whole new voices and choirs of voices that are going to have platforms for the first time in many generations, this also, frankly, for those of us that grew up in another time, is challenging presumed allegiance to Eurocentric art forms. It's challenging traditional social formats of attendance times, exhibition rules, and social formats. And it's challenging the ability of cultural institutions to set a cultural agenda. How we convene and how we communicate is changing, thanks in large part to technology, which has changed our lives to what I thought was an unfathomable degree. You know, in 2011, there was a report in the New York Times that said by the time she graduates from college, a young woman will have spent 20,000 hours online and an additional 10,000 hours playing video games. Which reminds us that video games in this country now outsell movie and music recordings combined, and they're reviewed in the arts and culture section of the New York Times. Moreover, how we convene is changing. Social scientists talk about cocooning and nesting, and really, why do we even need to leave home at all anymore? We can sit home with our home entertainment centers. We get a tour of MoMA. We get a tour of the Met. We get Hairspray live on Broadway. We've never left the comfort of our own homes. Moreover, how we consume is changing. The internet teaches you can shop at 3 in the morning or 8 at night. You can buy jeans tailor-made to your own body. We're learning to believe that personalization, customization, and convenience, which live arts, which have set curtains, set venues, attendant inconvenience of travel, parking, and the like, simply cannot meet. And what's it going to mean in the future when we say to a young person, you know that special exhibit at MoMA, that's $50, that's $75, that's $100 to get in? When that young person is used to downloading culture on demand for 24/7 for $1.29 a song or for free. You know, these are seismic questions, but we're not alone. These are the same questions that have redefined border books and newspapers and magazines. They are laying waste right now to retail as we've known it before. And as Adrienne Rich once said in one of her poems, we are out in a country that has no landscape, no laws. Whatever we do is pure invention. The maps they gave us are out of date by years. And aren't you glad you invited me here to talk to you today? You know, and unfortunately, this is just the beginning. We have climate change, we have cybersecurity, we have invasion of privacy, and more and more and more. With so much changing in the world around us, how can the world of the arts not change? You know, Brian Walker and David Scott, who study systems, characterize industry movements to 4 phases. They say basically industries begin with startup and growth. It's a time of passion, it's a time of startup, it's a time of great opportunity for everyone involved, and really demand exceeds supply. The world is your oyster. Then with a little bit of passage of time, we move into maturity and conservation, where systems are codified, institutions began to take root, suddenly supply and balance come into equal demand. And then we have a third phase called disruption, when outside forces come in and impinge in a different way. Suddenly, supply exceeds demand. Demand begins to plummet in a new way as the manifestation of the world begins to change our value. Ultimately, in this phase that we're engaged in now, this leads us to look inwards, to begin to see resources not as causative, but in a whole new way in terms of our lives. Disruption, however, is followed by reorganization. Reorganization, where fundamentally an industry like the arts industry has the opportunity to make one of two choices. We can either persevere in what we've done before, which leads to industry contraction where relatively few survive, or we can reorganize. Reorganize in terms of seizing new ways. The challenge that we're facing in the arts industry today, I think, lies in part to being open to reorganization, the phase we're in now that starts by looking outward, not looking inward, and seeing resources not as the source of our problem, but as the manifestation of the values that our communities place on us. To the 8 of you, I'd say you have a great new opportunity in this moment. And the opportunity as you have is twofold. First of all, in the role you bring as artists, a new role that I think doesn't dismiss what artists have done in the past, but expands what artists can do, and in the way you make bonds with your intended communities. People that are my age probably remember when I grew up, or when we all grew up, there was a rigid divide in the arts between the amateurs and the professionals. An amateur means a love of the form, as we all know, which we forgot in many cases. And clearly the professionals at that point had two options. You either entered the field, you became a full-time actor, a full-time musician, a full-time painter, or you taught. And we all had that phrase, those who can't do, teach. And Woody Allen had the follow-up, and those who can't teach, teach Jim. Which was always my favorite. What I think we didn't see at the time, while my generation is while there were glimmers in counter-protest and rich traditions, especially in communities of color, we didn't see the path of artist as citizen, as community organizer, as social animator. In the last decade especially, we are seeing the blurring of the divided line between professional and amateur and the emergence of what we call the pro-ams. At one end, avocational artists doing work at a professional level. You see their work on YouTubes and film festivals and dance competitions and more. And at the other end, you see professionally trained artists who are working not in concert halls or museums, but working in prison centers and neighborhood street corners and community centers, churches and more, not out of economic necessity, but because they believe the work they are called to do cannot be achieved in the museum, the concert hall, or the orchestra hall. These artists are expanding our very sense of what is possible in the arts, even as they're challenging the presumed ability, as I said before, of traditional arts to set the cultural agenda. Audiences, I think, are hungry for what new artists have to bring. You know, but they often believe that artists aren't interested in them. There's been a lot of research done lately by a group called the Public Will Building School, if some of you know, which is an attempt to say, how do we take an issue and turn it from a short-term gain to a long-term expectation? It's the difference, and I know Ann Meyer-Baker's here somewhere, it's the difference between lobbying for an increase in the appropriation of the NEA to making ongoing access to the arts a fundamental human right. People that look in public will building begin to organize not by saying, what do the artists think is professional? What do people that attach themselves to the arts deeply value? As a famous example around gay marriage, which some of you have talked about, gay, queer, lesbian, transsexual issues. In the early public will building movement, they began to study the gay marriage movement, and they began to say to straight people, why do you care? Why do you care about this? What are you possibly going to gain? When people said it's an issue of fairness, and we switched from getting the government out of the bedroom to fairness, the movement took off in a new way. Similarly, in studying public will building around the arts, researchers have said to people, what accounts for your deep allegiance to the arts? And we've heard and there are three big headlines around this that I'd like to share with you today. Number one, people that are deeply engaged in the arts, first of all, are three headlines that we need to pay attention to. Number one, the way we talk about the arts is deeply alienating to the public. You know, when we talk about the arts are something those people over there do. Oh yeah, that's what's going on in the museum. Oh, the arts, oh, that's over in the opera house. Oh yeah, the arts. When the very same issues are framed around creativity or the creative landscape, people say, I do that. Oh, artists do that. The creative landscape is a continuum that binds us together. The arts landscape is a chasm that separates us irreparably. Finding number 2, overwhelmingly, the value people place around the arts is on the social encounter. People say the arts connect me more deeply to myself and to other people. You know, and on some level we've known this. Those of us like Alicia who have studied performing arts for a long time, when you say, what's the reason somebody came tonight to the Kennedy Center? The number one answer is usually somebody asked me. And what's the reason you don't go? Well, there's nobody to go with. You know, the social encounter is part of what makes the fabric of the arts experience. When I was at Theater Communications Group, as Amy mentioned, we did a marketing campaign around the theater we were going to have a free night of theater nationwide. And we had 2 campaigns. The first campaign was famous actors, Nathan Lane, Bernadette Peters, people like Ed Giro here at the Shakespeare Theater, or people that were well known in the community, and people that always had gone to the theater and said, oh my God, I love the theater. Oh, I need to go more often to the theater. I've forgotten how much I really like, I want to go back to that. People that thought they didn't like the theater were totally disaffected. Then we showed a second campaign. People crying, couples nestled to each other, parents holding a child's hand as they watched an actor on the stage, and people who thought they didn't like the theater said, where do I get that? You know, if we really want to reach the public in new ways, if we emphasize product, we're going to be able to make connections to people who already think they love us. If we emphasize the social experience, we may open a threshold to people who have never thought they wanted to encounter our work at all. And third, and probably most powerful, the people who care most about the arts in this country are people under 40 and people of color. Not the world we have been, but the world we are going to be. Do we, as an arts community, have the courage to listen to what our audiences are telling us about the importance of the arts, to think about ourselves, talk about ourselves, and behave in ways that we have never talked about ourselves before? Now, I want to say this may not be for everybody. You know, clearly God knows we're always going to need the artist who is primarily aesthetically driven and who cares most about art for art's sake. And our awareness of human potential is expanded every time an aesthetic barrier is breached. But forward-thinking artists are at least asking themselves the kinds of questions are, what if my work is not to make a product to be consumed, but to provide an experience that's a springboard to my audience's own creativity? What if my job is not to produce plays or to produce an exhibit, but social orchestration in which the exhibit or the performance is a piece, but only a piece of what I'm called to do? What would be different if I stopped thinking of myself as doing an exhibit in a museum and thought of myself as an animator in a platform designed to aggregate social and visual energy? In my waning moments, I want to turn to you 8, so everybody else can look the other way for a minute, and say, I want you to urge, the future is going to demand that you be crystal clear about the kind of work you do and about the impact that you're going to make. You know, all of us have values. We have things we're going to stand for. We will fight for them even if we're punished for doing them. And probably it's a sign of our great humanity that all of our values are not the same. Some of you may be driven by leadership or financial independence or security or adventure or expertise among many that I could mention. Whatever your values are, knowing them deeply, rigorously is going to be critical if you are going to survive this journey. Everybody knows physical exhaustion because the potential to burn out in this moment is real. We all know physical exhaustion, but physical exhaustion and burnout are not the same. You can work 18 hours a day on something you care about and you're saying, baby, bring it on. You work 2 or 3 hours on something you don't care about, you think, oh dear God, pass the butter knives and let me open the veins right now. Burnout is not physical exhaustion. Burnout is disconnect from core values. And if you're starting to burn out in your lives, how can you possibly make a change to reconnect to what is core to your being, to refuel and renew and animate you for the future that you have to have? It's terrible, as we know, when people burn out and leave. It's worse when they burn out and stay. Now, I want to leave you with just the words of the great Anne Bogart, a theater director, and this again is for the 8, but I hope all of you will hear this as well. Do not assume you have to have some prescribed conditions to do your best work. Do not wait. Do not wait for enough time or money to accomplish what you think you have in mind. Work with what you have right now. Work with the people around you right now. Work with the architecture you see around you right now. Do not wait for what you assume is some appropriate, stress-free environment in which to generate expression. Do not wait for maturity or insight or wisdom. Do not wait until you are sure you know what you are doing. Do not wait until you have enough technique. What you do now, what you make of your present circumstance will determine the quality and scope of your future endeavors. And at the same time, Anne writes, be patient. I salute the 8 of you, not only as artists, but as social activists, regardless of your aesthetics, because choosing the lives you've chosen, you're inherently pledged to a world of inclusion, empathy, compassion, and hope. I salute you with the words of Tony Kushner in the closing pages of Angels in America when he writes, "You are fabulous creatures, each and every one of you, and I bless you. More life. The great work begins." To you. Thank you. Are we good?
Questions, anyone? I have a microphone. Who has a question?
And don't feel compelled. Because I know we want to go to the studio visits for these 8, which is really an extraordinary opportunity.
Well, how about start with a front row question?
Anybody got a question? We're having breakfast tomorrow. Do you all know about this yet? Yeah. We're having omelets and toast tomorrow morning. So, yeah. So you guys get to think about this overnight. Any question from anybody about anything? I'm here.
It's a quiet crowd, Ben.
No. I think we've got a crowd ready to go for upstairs. So if we've got, this is last call. Going once, going twice. If I can answer anything for anybody, catch me in the hallway. But the next step, Kate, I'm going to turn it to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say one more round of applause, please, for Ben Cameron.
Thank you.
And then, just as Ben just mentioned, this isn't over right now. We hope that you will stick around and meet all of the fellows individually. We have the ability for you to go and take a look at their studios, 1 floor up. For those of you that cannot stay today, or for those of you who would like to come back again, or for those of you who have friends who you think might enjoy this space, consider coming back for our open studios, which will happen monthly. The next one is November 18th. Did Amy mention the mosaic thing in the middle of the room? Yeah, so remember that only $10,000, and you get a permanent tile with your name on it in this building. Best investment going in philanthropy, personally. But thank you. We're so happy to see each and every one of you here. We hope you'll remember this day, the very first day at the Halcyon Arts Lab. It's very special.